On March 6, 2025, the President of the United States signed an executive order. Not a tweet, not a campaign promise, an executive order with the full legal weight of the office behind it. The order established a strategic Bitcoin reserve, the first time in history that the United States government formally recognized Bitcoin as a reserve asset of the nation. You probably heard about it. You probably moved on. Most people did. That was a mistake. The US government did not go out and buy Bitcoin. That is the first thing most people get wrong. Every Bitcoin in the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve came from criminal seizures and forfeitures. Silk Road, the Bitfinex hack, the Prince Group, a transnational criminal organization whose 127,271 BTC seizure became the largest single forfeiture in Department of Justice history. The FBI, the DEA, the IRS, years of law enforcement operations quietly depositing seized Bitcoin into government wallets. The US government is estimated to hold approximately 328,372 Bitcoin, worth roughly $25 billion at current prices, accounting for nearly 1.6% of all Bitcoin in circulation. It did not pay for any of it in the conventional sense. It seized it. Before the executive order, the standard procedure was to auction it off. The U.S. Marshals Service held regular Bitcoin auctions, selling seized crypto to the highest bidder. The government sold at least 185,230 Bitcoin for approximately $150 million before the reserve policy took effect. At today's prices, those coins would be billions. The government got $150 million. The executive order stopped that. No more sales. No more auctions. The Bitcoin stays. The order did three things. First, it established the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve as a permanent reserve asset, directing all federal agencies to consolidate their Bitcoin holdings into a single reserve managed by the Treasury Department. Bitcoin deposited into the reserve shall not be sold. That language is in the order. Second, it created a separate U.S. digital asset stockpile for non-Bitcoin assets, Ethereum, Solana, XRP, with different rules. The stockpile can potentially be sold. The Bitcoin reserve cannot. The distinction between the two is intentional and significant. Third, it directed the Treasury and Commerce departments to develop budget-neutral strategies for acquiring additional Bitcoin without using taxpayer funds. The most discussed mechanism involves revaluing the Treasury's gold certificates. The U.S. government carries its gold on the books at $42.22 per ounce, a price set in 1973. The current market price is above $3,000 per ounce. The accounting difference between those two numbers is an enormous unrealized surplus that could theoretically fund Bitcoin purchases without touching tax revenue. Now here's what is still unresolved. The reserve faces several hurdles: limited legislative bandwidth, thin bipartisan support, the absence of a clear funding mechanism for future acquisitions. An executive order can be reversed by the next president on their first day in office. Only an act of Congress makes this permanent. Senator Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming introduced the Bitcoin Act, directing the Treasury to purchase 200,000 BTC per year for 5 years and hold for a minimum of 20 years. The bill is in committee. Representative Nick Begich rebranded his version as the American Reserves Modernization Act, a strategic rename designed to attract bipartisan support. If the Bitcoin Act passes, the Treasury is estimated to begin its first official Bitcoin purchase in Q4 2026, making the United States the first sovereign nation to actively accumulate Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset. Speaking at the Bitcoin 2026 conference in Las Vegas just weeks ago, White House digital asset advisor Patrick Witt said an announcement on the reserve is coming in the next few weeks. He said the administration has cleared a key legal hurdle. The announcement is imminent. The United States is not alone. El Salvador holds approximately 7,500 BTC, accumulated through direct market purchases, not seizures. Pakistan announced a government-led strategic Bitcoin reserve in 2026. China controls approximately 190,000 Bitcoin from law enforcement seizures, but has no formal reserve strategy. Its assets sit in legal limbo. Germany held Bitcoin from seizures and sold all of it in 2024. At today's prices, that decision cost Germany billions. New Hampshire signed a law allowing the state treasurer to invest in digital assets with a market cap above $500 billion. At the time, only Bitcoin qualified. Texas signed its own strategic Bitcoin reserve into law in June 2025. The race between nations and between states has already started. Most people have not noticed. Here is what this means for you. The US government holds 328,372 BTCs, nearly 1.6% of all Bitcoin in circulation. It has committed to not selling it. If the Bitcoin Act passes, it will begin buying 200,000 Bitcoin per year for 5 years. That is 1 million Bitcoin removed from circulation by a single buyer over 5 years. The total supply is fixed at 21 million. The math of that removal is not complicated. You are not the US government. You cannot seize Bitcoin from criminal enterprises. You cannot revalue gold certificates from 1973. The only mechanism available to you is the one that was always available: buying before the outcome is obvious and holding through the weather that follows. The government just told you what it is holding. It told you it is not selling. It told you it may buy more. It told you it views Bitcoin the way it views gold, as a reserve asset worth protecting. That information is now public. What you do with it is still entirely up to you.